Few cars have a story that begins quite like the Porsche 911. It was 1963. The world was changing fast. Rock and roll ruled the radio, the space race was heating up, and in a small town in Germany, Ferdinand Butzi Porsche had a vision. He wanted to create a car that wasn't just fast, but timeless. Something that could conquer racetracks, but also take you home afterwards. The result was the Porsche 901. But there was one problem. Peugeot owned the rights to all three-digit car names with a 0 in the middle, so Porsche swapped the 0 for a 1, and the 911 was born. When the car debuted at the Frankfurt Motor Show, it turned heads instantly. The long hood, the unmistakable sloping rear. The rear engine layout shocked purists, but Porsche didn't care. This was a rebel, a statement, a sports car that refused to follow the rules. Early critics didn't know what to make of it. Some said the engine layout was dangerous. Others said it was too expensive. But Porsche stayed focused. They weren't building a car to please everyone. They were building a legacy. By 1964, production began. The first models featured a 2.0-liter flat-six engine, pushing out 130 horsepower. Modest by today's standards, but revolutionary back then. It was light, nimble, and unlike anything else on the road. Drivers felt connected, almost one with the car. Then came racing. Porsche entered the 911 in competitions across Europe, and it didn't take long before it started winning. Hill climbs, rallies, endurance races, the 911 was everywhere. Each victory silenced critics and built a cult following. By the late 1960s, the 911 wasn't just another sports car. It was becoming a cultural icon. Celebrities bought them, racers worshipped them, and enthusiasts started to realize that Porsche had created something special. The 911 Targa, introduced in 1966, pushed innovation even further. It featured a removable roof section and a distinctive roll bar, offering open-air driving while keeping structural strength. It was a clever response to looming U.S. safety regulations, and it quickly became a fan favorite. In 1967, Porsche released the 911S, the first truly high-performance version of the car. With upgraded suspension, brakes, and a 160 horsepower engine, it became a weapon on twisty roads and racetracks. And then, the car that would define a generation arrived, the 1973 Carrera RS 2.7. With its lightweight body, widened rear fenders, and the now legendary ducktail spoiler, the RS was a track monster. It became an instant classic and is now one of the most collectible 911S ever made. The early decade of the 911 was more than just car evolution. It was the birth of a philosophy, a commitment to performance, design, and raw driving emotion. Porsche had created not just a car, but a legend, and this was only the beginning. As the 1970s rolled in, the Porsche 911 was no longer the new kid on the block. It had proven itself, on the streets, on the track, and in the hearts of drivers around the world. But Porsche wasn't about to slow down. The world was entering a new era, one defined by speed, oil crises, and turbochargers. In 1974, the automotive industry faced a challenge. Stricter emissions regulations and the global oil crisis were forcing car makers to rethink performance. Most companies played it safe. Smaller engines, slower cars, fuel efficiency. Porsche did the opposite. They unleashed a monster. The 1975 Porsche 911 Turbo, also known as the 930, changed everything. It was loud, it was aggressive, and it was absolutely terrifying to drive. Under the hood was a turbocharged 3.0-liter flat-six that made 260 horsepower, numbers that rivaled supercars of the era. But it wasn't just the power, it was how that power hit. Early turbochargers had brutal lag. For a few seconds, the car felt tame. Then suddenly, the turbo would spool up and all hell broke loose. If you weren't ready, the rear engine layout and explosive boost could send you spinning in an instant. Journalists nicknamed it the Widowmaker, and yet, everyone wanted one. The turbo became a symbol of excess, danger, and pure driving thrill. Posters of the 911 Turbo were plastered on bedroom walls around the world. The wide fenders, the whale-tail spoiler, the stance, it looked like nothing else. Porsche had created a car that wasn't just fast, it was mythical. Throughout the late 70s and 80s, the 911 continued to evolve quietly alongside the Turbo. Engines grew to 3.2 liters, power increased, reliability improved, and interior comfort got better. but the core DNA stayed the same: raw, mechanical driving feel. And Porsche didn't just stick to the streets. In motorsport, the 911 was dominating. The 935 race car, a heavily modified, turbocharged 911, was unstoppable. It crushed its competition at Le Mans, Daytona, and countless endurance events. In 1979, a 935 even won the 24 Hours of Le Mans overall, beating prototype cars that were purpose-built for racing. By the mid-1980s, the 911 had reached almost mythical status. It wasn't the most comfortable car. It wasn't the easiest to drive. But it was pure, honest, addictive. And that's exactly why enthusiasts loved it. In 1989, Porsche released the 911 Carrera 3.2 Speedster, a limited production farewell to the classic G-Series generation. With its low windshield and aggressive stance, it captured the rebellious spirit of the early 1910s while celebrating everything the car had become over the last 2 decades. This was the end of an era. The 911 had survived oil crises, safety regulations, and fierce competition. It had gone from a misunderstood oddball to a cultural icon, and the next decade would prove whether Porsche could keep that magic alive, or lose it forever. By the early 1990s, the Porsche 911 faced its biggest challenge yet. The world around it was changing fast. Safety regulations were tightening. Customers wanted more comfort, more technology, and easier driving experiences. And inside Porsche, there were whispers. Whispers that the 911 might not have a future at all. The company was struggling financially. Their lineup was aging. And the 911, despite its legendary status, was expensive to build and increasingly difficult to keep modern. Porsche needed a miracle. And that miracle came in 1989 with the release of the 964. The 964 looked similar to the old 911 at first glance, but underneath, it was a revolution. 85% of the car was completely new. For the first time, the 911 had power steering. It had ABS brakes. It even had an optional all-wheel drive system, borrowed from the legendary 959 Supercar. This wasn't just a raw sports car anymore. It was becoming a precision instrument. The 3.6-liter flat-six engine made it faster than ever before. But what really made the 964 special was how it balanced modern technology with classic 911 character. Porsche didn't erase the soul of the car. They evolved it. Then, in 1993, Porsche unveiled what many enthusiasts consider the greatest 911 ever made, the 993. This was the last 911 to feature the original air-cooled engine, a design philosophy that dated all the way back to 1963. But don't let that fool you. The 993 was a masterpiece of engineering. Its body was smoother, more aerodynamic, and unmistakably elegant. The suspension was completely redesigned, finally taming some of the 911's infamous lift-off oversteer without ruining the driving thrill. It was faster, more refined, and most importantly, it was special. The 993 marked the end of an era, the end of air cooling, and enthusiasts knew it. Even today, the 993 is considered one of the most collectible 911 generations ever built. But then came a moment that almost broke Porsche's fan base in half. In 1998, Porsche introduced the 996 generation, and this car changed everything. For the first time in its history, the Porsche 911 switched from air cooling to water cooling. This wasn't just a technical upgrade, it was a cultural shock. Purists were furious. To them, the sound, the character, the soul of the 911 was tied to its air-cooled engine. And now, that soul was gone. But Porsche had no choice. Emissions regulations and rising production costs meant the old air-cooled engines simply couldn't survive. The 996 had to be more efficient, more profitable, and appeal to a wider audience. The 996 was also the first 911 to share major components with the Boxster to cut costs. And while this saved Porsche financially, enthusiasts noticed. The infamous fried egg headlights became a symbol of the new 911, modern but controversial. However, here's what many people overlook. The 996 saved Porsche. Its completely new platform, modern engine, and mass-market appeal brought the company back from the brink of bankruptcy. It opened the 911 to an entirely new generation of drivers, and performance-wise, it was a beast. The 996 Turbo in particular shocked everyone. With a 3.6-liter twin-turbo flat-six making 415 horsepower and all-wheel drive, It was supercar fast, yet reliable and easy to live with. Porsche purists might have complained, but the sales numbers didn't lie. The 996 sold incredibly well. It set the stage for Porsche to evolve from a niche sports car maker into a global luxury performance powerhouse. By the early 2000s, the 911 had been reinvented. It was no longer a raw, unpredictable machine like the early Turbo. It was sophisticated, powerful, and more capable than ever before. And most importantly, it was profitable. Porsche had secured the 911's future for decades to come. What came next would push the 911 into the modern era, blending technology, luxury, and performance like never before. By the mid-2000s, Porsche was riding a wave of momentum. The 996 had saved the company, but it came with scars. Enthusiasts respected its performance, but criticized its looks, its shared parts, and the loss of that classic Porsche feel. Porsche needed a comeback, something that would remind the world why the 911 was iconic in the first place. In 2004, that comeback arrived. The 997 generation. The 997 was Porsche's way of saying, "We heard you." Gone were the controversial fried egg headlights. The new design was sharper, rounder, and unmistakably classic. For many, the 997 looked like the perfect blend of heritage and modernity. Under the skin, Porsche refined nearly every part of the car. Steering feel was improved, suspension tuning was sharper, the interior was more luxurious but still driver-focused. It wasn't a revolution like the 996. It was an evolution done right. The 997 also marked a return to emotional connection. Cars like the 997 Carrera S, GT3, and GT2 RS reminded enthusiasts why they fell in love with the 911 in the first place. These were raw, thrilling machines that connected driver and road like few cars could. And then came the 997 Turbo. With 480 horsepower and a 0 to 60 time of 3.4 seconds, it was faster than many Ferraris of its time. Yet you could daily drive it in comfort. The 997 Turbo was the car that made supercar performance accessible and reliable. Porsche had officially reclaimed its crown. But behind the scenes, Porsche was thinking even bigger. The company had grown massively thanks to the Cayenne SUV, and now they had the budget to invest heavily into their sports cars. The next generation of 911 wouldn't just be a sports car, it would be a technological masterpiece. In 2011, Porsche introduced the 991 generation, and everything changed. The 991 was longer, wider, and more sophisticated than any 911 before it. Its cabin was completely redesigned, borrowing luxury cues from the Panamera. Some enthusiasts feared it was becoming too luxurious, but the driving experience quickly silenced the doubts. The 991 introduced electronic power steering, which purists initially hated. But Porsche engineers perfected it, keeping the steering feel alive while making the car more precise than ever. The PDK dual-clutch transmission became lightning fast, transforming the 911 into a weapon on track and the street. Special models like the 991, GT3, GT3 RS, and 911R became instant legends. These cars blurred the line between race car and road car, and they created massive hype. People were paying insane markups just to get their hands on one. But perhaps the most shocking move came in 2015. Porsche announced that all Carrera models would switch from naturally aspirated engines to turbocharged ones. For over 50 years, the base 911 models were naturally aspirated. This was a huge change. The internet exploded. Enthusiasts screamed, "The 911 is dead." But once again, Porsche proved them wrong. The new turbocharged engines were faster, more efficient, and packed with instant torque. The driving experience didn't die. It evolved. By the late 2000s, the 991 platform had matured into one of the greatest sports cars ever built. Models like the GT2 RS shattered Nürburgring lap records. Porsche was dominating both on the road and on the racetrack, and sales were stronger than ever. What made the 997 and 991 eras so powerful wasn't just the technology, it was the balance. Porsche found the sweet spot between raw emotion and modern innovation. They honored the legacy of the 911 while pushing it further than anyone imagined. By 2020, the 911 was no longer a niche sports car. It was a global symbol of performance, engineering excellence, and timeless design. And it had fans in every corner of the world. The 911 had survived purist backlash, financial crises, and massive technological shifts, and it emerged not just alive, but stronger than ever. What came next would take the 911 into the digital and hybrid age, without losing its soul. The automotive world was changing faster than ever. Electric cars, hybrid systems, and digital technology were reshaping what performance meant. Some feared that the classic sports car was dying, but Porsche had a different plan. They weren't going to abandon the 911. They were going to future-proof it. Enter the 992 generation. Wider, smarter, and more capable than ever before. The 992 wasn't just a facelift, it was a complete technological overhaul. For the first time, the 911 fully embraced digital displays, driver assistance, and modern connectivity. Yet somehow, it still felt like a 911. Visually, the 992 blended tradition with aggression. The rear light bar stretched across the width of the car, a nod to the past, but with a futuristic twist. The body became wider across all models, giving even the base Carrera a muscular stance. The interior was clean and minimal, inspired by classic 1970s dashboards, but loaded with tech underneath. It was Porsche's way of saying, we can evolve without losing our soul. But the biggest change wasn't what you could see, it was what you couldn't. From the very start, the 992's platform was designed to accommodate hybrid power. Porsche didn't announce it immediately, but the signs were there. Larger transmission tunnels, new electrical systems, and stronger cooling setups. The 911 was getting ready for the future. On the performance side, the 992 delivered in true Porsche fashion. Even the base Carrera packed incredible speed, 0 to 60 in just around 4 seconds. The Carrera S, 3.5 seconds. Turbo and Turbo S models, supercar territory. With over 640 horsepower in the Turbo S, this was the fastest, most powerful 911 lineup ever built. And yet, it wasn't just about numbers. Porsche made the 992 more approachable without losing the thrill. The suspension was adaptive and intelligent. The car could transform from a comfortable Grand Tourer to a razor-sharp track weapon with a single-button press. This duality became a defining trait of the modern 911. In 2022, Porsche unveiled the 992 GT3, and once again, enthusiasts went crazy. A screaming naturally aspirated flat six, a double wishbone front suspension lifted straight from their race cars. This was Porsche proving they could still build analog magic in a digital age. The GT3 wasn't just fast, it was a statement. We haven't forgotten who we are. But the real turning point is what's coming next. Porsche has already confirmed that a hybrid 911 is in development. It won't be fully electric, at least not yet, but it will combine electric power with the iconic flat-six engine. Why? Because Porsche knows performance isn't dying, it's evolving. Electric motors can deliver instant torques and insane acceleration, while the engine keeps that raw, emotional character alive. Together, they'll create something entirely new. At the same time, Porsche launched the Taycan, their first fully electric sports sedan. And while it's not a 911, it gave the world a glimpse of Porsche's future. Silent, blisteringly fast, and still distinctly Porsche. The Taycan proved the company could dominate the EV space without compromising their DNA. For the 911, this hybrid transition will be one of the most important moments in its history. Some enthusiasts are nervous, just like they were during the switch to water cooling in the 90s. Or turbocharging in the 2000s. But if history has taught us anything, it's that Porsche always finds a way to adapt without losing the essence. From the humble 901 prototype in the 1960s, to the fire-breathing turbos of the 80s, to the technological masterpieces of today, the Porsche 911 has evolved more than almost any car in history. Yet, at its core, it remains the same. A rear-engine sports car that connects driver and machine like nothing else. Over 60 years, the 911 has survived purest outrage, financial challenges, changing emissions laws, and technological revolutions. And through it all, it hasn't just survived, it's thrived. More than 1 million 911s have been built. It's not just a car anymore, it's a legend. As we look to the future, one thing is certain. The world will change. Cars will become electric, autonomous, and connected in ways we can't even imagine. But the Porsche 911 will still be here, evolving, adapting, and proving that true icons never die. This is the story of the 911, not just a sports car, but a 60-year journey of innovation, passion, and timeless design, a legacy that will continue for generations to come.